Hey, this is Kevin. I am the Next Gen pastor here at Calvary Baptist Church, and I'm here to talk to you about our Introduction to Old Testament course that we are offering as part of our Christian Life Institute. So it'll be on Sundays starting this Sunday, August 25th from 4 to 6, and it's part of our commitment as a church to take Christian education seriously. And so we're going to look today at what might be and what probably is a very familiar passage, and kind of look at how these classes go deeper than we would normally on our own, and give some space for that kind of not just discussion but instruction to happen based on all of these different aspects of Scripture. So let's look at Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. So this is something that we would usually put on a coffee mug or a t-shirt, or give somebody with a journal on it that's probably going off to school. And there is a surface level application that we can have of reading this verse, that God has a plan for our future, that there is a hope that is secure, and that is a right application of this verse. But we shouldn't empty it completely of its context, because it was spoken into an original context to a specific people group, and that affects how we would interpret that. So what we want to do is open up that application based on, first of all, number one, the text that we're looking at. We will always start with the text. In the Old Testament course, we'll start with our textbook as Scripture, but then we'll look at the context. We'll look at the historical context, we'll look at the literary context, and then we'll look at our application from the theological context of it. So let's break down what we know about Jeremiah 29:11. And to do that, we're going to widen out to the context of the entire Old Testament, what would normally be called the Hebrew Bible. And the Hebrew Bible, in its original condition, contained three separate categories: the law, the prophets, and the writings. Now, where do you think Jeremiah be found in these three categories? The prophets. Oh, thank you. Yes, the prophets. The prophets is where we would find Jeremiah. And so if we're going to look at these different contexts of Scripture and how to interpret and to apply it, we will need to know something about the time and context that Jeremiah speaks into. Jeremiah likely prophesying between the years of 627 and 587 BCE. And so we are looking at a prophet that was in a tumultuous time in Judah's history, and that has something to say about what's going on, especially about the surrounding nations, but about the kings and those in leadership. Jeremiah also experiences a lot of persecution and rejection of his message himself in these times, because he's ultimately prophesying the downfall of the nation at the hands of other nations. And so to preach a message like this within that context puts a very different spin on it than simply, I know the Lord has a plan and a future for me. We can get that out of this verse, but there is something deeper going on if we know that as a prophet, Jeremiah is speaking the words of God. Ro'eh as a seer, or Navi as someone who is bubbling forth, the two words used for prophet in the Old Testament. We are hearing the words of the Lord through the mouth of Jeremiah, and there are literary aspects to what happens in Scripture. There are characters, there is the Lord, there are those that He has a plan for, and so there are people that this is bringing to our minds when we read this. It's not just a symbolic you. There's a definite you there. And this comes in chapter 29 as a series of letters that actually come from Jerusalem to captives in the Babylonian captivity. After the fall of the southern kingdom, in the Babylonian captivity, we are seeing people, or after or around the fall of the southern kingdom, we're seeing people receive these messages of hope in a time where they desperately need them. And so we couch all of what Jeremiah says, as we do with all the prophets, in these theological themes of sin, punishment and restoration. And so there was a reason why the exile happened. There was an infidelity, a rejection, a rebellion against Yahweh, the Lord, that the Israelites, the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom, have experienced the results of that infidelity. And so there's a punishment that results from that, but there's also this restoration that Jeremiah and our other prophets promise. If you'd like to be a part of our Old Testament class that we're offering this fall, sign up with the link provided in this video. We start class this Sunday, so you don't want to miss it. Be there for the first class so you can get on the ground floor of our introduction to the Old Testament.